You have identified all the major vertebrate organs, and they're going to look a little bit different in each one of these vertebrates that we're going to do. The shark has a couple of special things that I want to point out. Let's look at the external anatomy first. You guys can see, because the tail is cut, the vertebrae and the musculature that we were showing, last time, looking at typical vertebrate body plan, right? There's vertebrae protecting the spinal cord, and there's a lot of musculature that powers this tail. Anyone know how to tell a male from a female shark? Claspers. Claspers, which are basically modified pelvic fins. Right here. Those are claspers, so this is a male. The claspers are going to be used to deliver sperm to the female. There's also other pelvic fins right here. Right? It's very stiff because it's been preserved. And what are these fins?
Pectoral fins.
Pectoral fins. What's this fin?
Caudal.
Caudal fin. And these two?
Dorsal.
Dorsal fins. There's no anal fin in this shark.
You're not wearing any gloves.
I'm not wearing any gloves, that's true. You know what? It's really okay. The snake, as you guys did with the frog, you can, if you want to later, explore this shark further, open up the whole buccal cavity, nares, just like you saw in the frog. You can try to get a look at the teeth. You'll probably have to cut this open if you want to look at the shark's teeth. This is something called a spiny dogfish, which is a really common small shark. It feeds on other fish, and sometimes these guys are so numerous actually that they really impact fisheries because they eat a lot of smaller fish, and other larger fish eat them. Anybody know something special about the shark's sensory capabilities? They have a sense that all other vertebrates lack.
The lateral line.
Okay, lateral line is one thing that many fish have. You can kind of see it here on this shark really nicely. Right? What's the lateral line?
Detects vibration.
Detects vibration, movement in the water, right? It has little tiny hair cells in there, very much like the hair cells in your fluid-filled canals of your inner ear, right? So as those hair cells bend, they're connected to neurons that carry information to the shark's brain to tell them something about what's going on in the water. What else is unique to sharks, though? Because fish have this too. Ampullae of Lorenzini. Now, what is that?
Sensory organ. Like right in front detects electrical signals?
Yeah, it's hard to see on this shark, but if you look very carefully at the snout of the shark, you see those little tiny openings. If you squeeze it, you might be able to see that there's some kind of jelly-like substance coming out. Right? Those are called the ampullae of Lorenzini. They're unique to sharks, and it's a really amazing sensory capability because it detects electrical field, which means that there could be, you guys are just doing nervous system now in lecture? All about action potential, right? And depolarization across membrane. So if there's a prey item buried in the seafloor that's alive, right? So it has neural activity, the shark's ampullae of Lorenzini can detect that electrical activity of some other living organism, right? So it's a huge advantage for the shark in finding prey that's very well hidden. Right? So that's kind of unique sensory capability of sharks. Other external features, the gill slits, kind of hard to see right here. But when we open up the shark, you'll see the internal side of the gill slits. Anything else about the external anatomy that I've forgotten? You guys have your little diagram of shark? I think we got everything right. Oh, spherical, right. So what's the spherical again? Yeah, it's you might have heard. Oh, it's kind of hard to find in this preserved shark. You might have heard that sharks have to swim constantly to stay alive, and that's not quite true. There are some sharks that can lie very still and still be able to respire, right? And that's because there's a spiracle here where water can enter and flow over the gills, even if they're not moving. There are some species of fish that do have to swim continuously, but not all sharks are that way. So that's the spherical, and I think that's it for the external anatomy. Okay, so now what you guys are going to do with all of your new dissections is basically the same thing you did with your frog. Kind of making a medial incision on the ventral surface and then opening up the cavity and trying to identify all those major internal internal organs. And the shark skin in particular, you guys want to touch this. If you run your finger the wrong way down the shark skin, you feel how rough that is? It's extremely rough. Remember those placoid scales that you guys saw? If you go the wrong way, you'll feel just how rough that skin is. You guys can check that out later. Placoid scales. What's special about those placoid scales? You guys remember that? Yeah, they're funneling the water currents in a very efficient way, hydrodynamically extremely efficient. Right, so that's something that you can check out too. So let's try to open this. I don't know if my dull scalpel will really make it, but we'll see.
Is that paint on it, or is it? It's done.
It's actually something that you guys will see later with some of the fetal pigs. What many of these biological supply companies do is they inject colored latex into arteries and veins. And sometimes even they have neurons colored a different color, but usually arteries and veins are injected with pink and blue dye to show something about the circulation. Some of the older dissections that you guys have around here, like the old turtles and that might be it, have that injection. So it's really helpful with the fetal pigs where you are in fact going to study the major arteries and veins coming from and going to the heart. And so if you have an injected pig, it's a lot easier because you see the pink and blue dye. So sometimes, though, it's kind of unfortunate that, you know, the dye spills out everywhere, like you see here, and then it's kind of hard to tell what artery you're looking at. But, okay, now let's see. The skin is actually not that thick, so I don't want to go too deep here. I'm already into the internal organs, and it doesn't actually look like it's in great condition. Let's see what it looks like. We have a bunch of sharks that are already open that are pretty nice, so if this one doesn't look so good, we'll look at some other ones. I think scissors are better than these scalpels, actually. It's just really, really stiff from that preservative. When we get out the snake that's the big red-tailed boa, that snake was actually one of Professor Beeman's snakes that used to live down the hall there. And you probably know more about the history of it than I do, but when a couple of semesters ago the honors students dissected that snake as part of their project, and it was really interesting because, as you guys will see, it was a snake full of embryos. And that was kind of mysterious because, as far as we knew, that snake had never been with a male. So either somehow when cages were getting cleaned or before she even got here, maybe she had been with a male and stored sperm or something, but she's full of embryos. So it was a very interesting dissection. Okay, so now, as usual, when the first thing that you see when you open up any vertebrate is going to be this big organ, which looks really sort of diseased in this shark, I must say. Doesn't look very normal. What is the first organ that you're going to come to in most vertebrates when you first open it up? It takes up most of the cavity. Liver. Yes, liver. So the shark liver is really interesting. You guys know something special about shark liver?
It's huge.
It's huge, right? There's a couple different lobes here. At least 2 major lobes and sort of some minor ones. This one I actually cut a little bit. Right? I'm going to have to cut some big flaps off of this shark because I can't really open it properly. What's different about shark liver compared to other vertebrate livers?
The other ones have 3 cells.
Blood cell production or recycling perhaps, but what makes a shark? Remember we were talking before about swim bladders in fish. What's a swim bladder? In a bony fish, what's a swim bladder? Anybody remember that?
Air-filled sac.
An air-filled sac, and what's that useful for?
For keeping the fish afloat.
Buoyancy, right? Moving up and down in the water column. So a shark does not have a swim bladder, but it also needs to move up and down. And